and welcome back to another video of Reviews by Beth, and today I'm going to be talking about the classic novel that is George Orwell's 1984. The book 1984 is a classic book, one of the ones that we refer back to time and time again, and yet I cannot believe I have not read it until now, but I finally have, so I'm going to give you my thoughts and opinions. Now, if you don't know what this is about, it is a dystopian novel, which means something set off in the future in a kind of alternate universe, but maybe not too alternate from our own. Now, I actually searched when this was actually written, and this was written in 1949, so nearly 100 years ago, maybe 80 years ago now. And it's really interesting how something written so long ago can still have such relevance in today's society, and I think there was a lot of foreshadowing in this. I think it's really interesting to read it now at a time when society has progressed and technology is something that can be seen as scary, especially with the creation of AI recently. So I think it's definitely interesting to look at this book, especially in two different aspects, because there's definitely talks about the impacts of World War II and the kind of the Cold War emerging in the beginning of the Cold War, but then also you can read it in the perspective of the modern day and going, oh gosh, wow, this is kind of scary how similar these two things are. The concept of 1984 is basically that there is a totalitarian, I can never say that word, a totalitarian regime controlled by the all-seeing and the all-knowing Big Brother. And I literally didn't know that Big Brother, the show, and kind of the reference came from this book, and maybe I'm just stupid for not knowing that, but there we go. So Big Brother controls everything. He's all-seeing and all-knowing, and in every single room and in every single space there is heightened security. So where you live, say in my room, there would be an eye or a camera looking at you, monitoring you always. There are always people looking at you, a bit like when you're in the house with Big Brother and you're always being watched by the people at home. So that kind of idea that you're a spectacle, people will look at you. But instead of being in a Big Brother house for entertainment, it's quite a scary regime where you're constantly being tracked, and anything that you do might result in you being a prisoner. If you commit a thought crime, if you commit any specific crimes against this dictator / government regime, which is ruled by Big Brother. So this novel really focuses on truth and what is truth and what is fiction, and there's very blurred lines in between them, and those two things, truth and fiction, get extremely mixed up. The difference between truth and fiction is an extreme one in this novel, and I think it's done extremely well. We follow a character called Winston Smith, who is a typical character who has typical thoughts in this novel, and actually we learn that he's a very disturbed man. He has very disturbing thoughts, very gory ones, full of violence, wanting to hurt people, wanting to rape women. Very, very, very not normal, but is seen as a normal man. And we follow him as he works for the ministry. So there's 4 ministries in Big Brother: the Ministry of Love, the Ministry of Peace, the Ministry of Truth, and the Ministry of Plenty. And now all of these use the term doublethink, which is created in this book, which is basically the opposite of what is actually the truth, which is often what this novel is about, the line between truth and fiction and how those two things can blur. So this main character, Winston Smith, is working for the Ministry of Truth, and his job basically every day to day is he has to go into a records room, and he is given a list of things to do, and he is given things that he has to amend the past. So he will be given something saying, I don't know, like, it was sunny yesterday. It obviously wasn't this. It was sunny yesterday, and then he has to change it saying it was rainy yesterday, and then once he puts that thing in saying it was rainy yesterday, the record that said it was sunny yesterday gets destroyed, and then it was rainy yesterday, and that's it, that's fact. The idea of truth is the things that he manipulates, and he completely eradicates the original truth and replicates it with falsehoods, but then makes them become true. So it's all about spreading misinformation and making the information given something that is completely false, but that Big Brother and the regime wants everybody to buy into and believe. So it's almost like it's just a form of propaganda, brainwashing that everybody is partaking in. And he is aware of this. Winston goes to work every day knowing that he's changing the truth, but he can't say anything about it, because if he says or does anything about it, then he can mystically disappear, or he unlives, meaning he never lived in the first place. People can literally get wiped off in this dystopian earth. So people can literally just never have existed. And this is it reminded me a lot of the propaganda that was used in the Nazis and this false information that is spread. But then also it reminds me of like day-to-day things and misinformation that is consistently spread in social media and how that impacts many people. So it was very interesting trying to link something that was written in the 1940s that is still relevant today in these 2020s. Like, we are constantly being given information, and it's judging what information we deem to be credible, and how do we associate what is credible with what is not credible, and how do we differentiate them. And so basically that is a lot of what this tackles, but it also tackles kind of psychological. It's a very psychological novel. It kind of makes you question what is going on, because Winston is questioning what is going on. If you're enjoying this content, then please like, comment and subscribe. And if you really want to support us, then you can by using our Amazon links to buy the books, or by visiting our Patreon channel. Winston, throughout this book, tries to have a relationship with another member of the Ministry of Truth, and they have this very odd relationship where it's not full of love whatsoever. It's just purely sexually driven, and they care for each other but not in a loving way. They just kind of want to be able to live their lives, but they have to do it in complete secret because they are afraid that they will get caught by Big Brother. What Winston realizes throughout the novel is that he figures out that he's not okay with what is going on, and he's like, actually, none of this is okay. Why should I be changing the truth? Why is there all this torture and all of this anger and all of this brutal control, when really we should have a democracy and everything should be fair? Now, as well as Big Brother and the Ministry, there is discussions and rumours around an opposition called the Brotherhood. It's spoken about during the novel. We're aware of the Brotherhood from the start, and people in Oceania are encouraged to hate them, and they have whole sections of the book where they literally shout at people who are leaders of the Brotherhood and yell violent things against them. People are gone to hangings, public hangings, to see people be hanged who were from the Brotherhood. There are executions. Children are being told that they need to tell on their parents if they suspect that they're from the Brotherhood. You know, they're trained a bit like the Hitler Youths. I think that was like a little nod to that, probably. And it's all of this just like, we must hate the Brotherhood, and just like absolutely villainizing them when the Brotherhood are trying to allegedly set these people free. So throughout the book, Winston's kind of coming to this conclusion that he doesn't want to be involved in the Ministry of Truth, and he actually wants to live a free life. And so he wants to join the Brotherhood. Now, there is a character in the book called O'Brien, who is a very complex character, and we see at the very beginning of the novel, Winston and O'Brien share a bit of a look, and O'Brien and Winston thinks, oh my goodness, he's on the same side as me, I can just tell with a look. And it's because no one is allowed to say anything of these things, so people look to glances and small motions of hands and little tiny things to try and see who is against and who is for the Brotherhood. And he goes, O'Brien is good, we're going to work with him. So he goes to O'Brien's house, and spoiler alert, O'Brien actually is, I think he is a double agent. So he says to Winston, I am part of the Brotherhood, we will take care of you. But then it later turns out he is not part of the Brotherhood, and actually later ends up torturing Winston in the Ministry of Love. Again, which is another thing of doublethink, which is the opposite of what love is. When you think of doublethink, you think of love, it's the opposite. You think of truth, it's the opposite. You think of peace, they're talking about war. They control war. So it's a very complex and very psychological novel where as a reader you're kind of like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And you're trying to figure out who's on what side, why Winston is feeling these things, because a lot of the things that you're going, oh yeah, no, I like Winston, this is good, he should get out of it. But then in other parts of the novel you're like, oh my goodness, what is he saying? Like, what is he doing? You know, because he's been just institutionalized and he's lived in this society so long, he's got messed up thoughts. Well, what we perceive readers nowadays is completely messed up. And he's just a product of the society and he's trying to break out of it, but there's still parts of the society within him. So, you know, it's a very well written book, and it's really, really clever. It's extremely clever with the way George Orwell has written this. It's just very clever, and I just feel like it's so relevant to today as well as back then. I just think that this book won't age, and especially in the book there's moments of isolation and being left alone with your thoughts and being separated from everybody. And even recently, like, you know, with COVID, people had to deal with that. Yeah, it's very interesting. It relates to today, it relates to back then. And if you haven't read it, it was quite like an easy-ish read. Like, it wasn't really difficult with the like the words weren't difficult to read. Like, the sentence structure was good. It was challenging psychologically. Like, you had to think about it when you were reading it. It's not just something that you can just sit down and read for pleasure. I mean, it is pleasurable to read it, but it's also, it makes you think. And I can so see why people study this day to day, because it's just so relevant. The only part of this I really didn't like is there was like a 50-60 page like manifesto of the Brotherhood talking about Big Brother and that regime and saying how it was ran and how they can change it, and it just read a bit like it's a political manifesto, and I don't like to read political manifestos for fun. Well, that was the only bit of the book for me. I was just kind of like, I'm not sure. But overall, this book was extremely good. I would recommend it. If I was to give it a rating out of 5, I would give it a 4.5 out of 5. Just taking the point off just because of that manifesto in the middle, but the more it stuck with me, this book, I have to say. And I do think part of what makes a good book is how much you think about it afterwards and how much a book stays with you. And this one definitely did. So I would recommend it. It's really, really, really good to read. If you haven't already, you should try out 1984 by George Orwell. If you like this video, then please like, comment and subscribe. And if you want to support us even more, you can visit our Patreon channel. So thank you. Bye.